Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show. And tonight we are going to answer your questions live. We are going to do a week 8 preview. We are going to help you handle your injury situations since I cannot help my Buccaneers handle theirs. All right, let's get right to it. Yes, we are going to discuss tomorrow's Thursday night game to get things fired up. That's right, the Minnesota Vikings traveling to SoFi to take on the LA Rams, and Cooper Kupp still an LA Ram as of now. So we'll see how that all entails. I don't know. I would love to see Kupp in a Bucs uniform for just a second round pick, but what do I know? I am not an NFL GM. I know that Jason Licht, the Bucs GM, doesn't like to trade his early round picks, so whatever. All I know is that from Tampa's perspective, last few years we've gotten Chris Braswell from Alabama with our second round pick, and a couple of years ago we took Kyle Trask with a second round pick. So I don't know. Love to see old number 10 there catching passes from Baker, since we no longer have Godwin this year and Mike Evans is out at least 3 weeks, but we'll get to that when we preview you the Atlanta at Tampa game. Right now, let's talk Vikings at Rams. There's the rumor out there, of course, that Stafford will be going to the Vikings for Sam Darnold and something. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to believe. There's so much stuff out there. Let's get to the injuries, though. From the Rams' perspective, it looks like Cooper Kupp is healed and ready to go. His ankle is now all right. Jordan Whittington is now out. And Puka Nacua has started his 21-day window to get back on the field, so he will be out again. Whittington is out with a shoulder injury this week, so it is going to be the Cooper Kupp show Thursday night. He'll be matching target for target with Justin Jefferson and the high-flying Vikings. Let's see here. What do we got? Minnesota is a 3-point favorite. Over-under is nice and high at 48.5. I don't know. These Thursday night games, man, they just put me to sleep. I don't know. I mean, I don't bet on games, individual games, but I would probably take the under, I guess, in this one. Darnold's been good, all right? If you're looking for a cheaper-ish quarterback, he'd be somebody to target, I'd say. But his price has gone up, and then the uncertainty of where he will be next season just makes him a one-year Band-Aid, basically. So if you've had a quarterback get injured, maybe you're unsure of Jaden Daniels' status this week, who else out there? If you were stuck starting Deshaun Watson and didn't have Jameis Winston, because it looks like he will be starting, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson also looks healthy now, so who knows who's starting for the Browns. Maybe they'll both play again. I don't know. Does it really matter? I mean, they don't have Amari Cooper anymore. Looks like Cedric Tillman is now the guy in Cleveland. Though I should say David Njoku is actually the guy in Cleveland. But anyway, back to the Vikings-Rams game. So last week, Aaron Jones was questionable. He did play, and he popped off. And so you should be good starting Aaron Jones. Kyron Williams is, of course, healthy, so he's good to go. So we have Stafford, Kupp, and Kyron all ready to roll. They're all starts, in my opinion. I know that the Vikings have had a tough defense this season, but I don't know. The Lions Lions put up some points against them. 31 is better than average. So last week's game, they had it was 31-29, so 60 points in that game. I could see something similar in this. I don't think the Rams are as talented as the Lions, but the Rams have showed signs of life in spite of them being rumored to be being open to trade Kupp and trade Stafford here. I don't know. I think they're going to try their best to make a run at things this year. Their division is tough with San Francisco, Seattle, and Arizona, but they have their question marks too. Definitely the Niners, with all their injuries, are, very vulnerable this season. So this might be a year to try and sneak out the division. But I mean, the Rams are sitting. Let me look at the standings here in that division. The Rams are sitting at the bottom, but they're 2-4. I mean, Seattle's at 4-3. So Seattle has 3 losses and everybody else has 4 losses. All right. Rams win this game, they could be right back in the thick of it. So they're going to give it one good shot here. The Vikings, like I said, though they've dominated early on, now they lost a game and have a quick turnaround here with a trip to LA. Who knows what we'll see from them. Sam Darnold, yes, he's looked good, but not amazing. It's not like he's an MVP candidate right now. If you look at his numbers on the season, Darnold. Darnold is, what is he at here? So he's at a 66% completion percentage, 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. So he's turned it over a little with 5 picks. I don't know. Like I said, he's not a surefire starter, but he's definitely somebody that could be your QB2 in Superflex leagues. So I still don't know what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that Darnold is being carried by the rest of his talent around him. I mean, you can't deny the talent of Justin Jefferson and how he helped carry Kirk Cousins for a few years there. But Cousins is definitely a more talented player than Darnold. But Darnold definitely has age going for him. So he's just coming into the prime of his career. So, it's an interesting situation there in Minnesota. Rebuilding teams, J.J. McCarthy is still somebody to go out there and look to acquire. If you've got some contending assets, McCarthy is somebody you can get much cheaper now than you could back in the summer. So that's a possibility. I mean, depending on the owner of McCarthy, you could get him as a throw-in at this point if you do a bigger deal. So, there's options there. Aaron Jones is definitely a contending running back to look to acquire. Maybe if you just had one of the injured wide receivers, and we're going to talk about them all night long here, Godwin, Ayuk, Rashee Rice, if you're still sitting on him, those guys aren't going to be ready to play until, Rice obviously got hurt earlier. It seems like forever ago now, but Godwin and Ayuk, I don't know that they're going to be ready for the beginning of the season next year. They might not be ready until mid-season. Godwin probably, with it just being an ankle, he probably could be ready for the beginning of the season. I know the Bucs are saying he could be ready if they make a run in the playoffs, but I don't know. I'm not counting on that. I'll say that. And I don't want to dwell on his injury, but it just looks so bad that I cannot see him playing again this season. So my point is if you're a contender right now, Godwin and Ayuk are fresh in people's minds, and now is the time to deal them. So you're going to want to, you still can get value, not as much value as you could last week for them, but you still can get good value for them. You still can get a good piece. I mean, heck, DeAndre Hopkins now has more value. He's come back to life, right? So you could get D-Hop and something on top, right? I don't think you could get D-Hop and Aaron Jones for one of them, but it's possible. You never know how the rebuilding team in this case is going to value somebody like Godwin, value somebody like Ayuk. I would think Ayuk would be valued more because he's 2 years younger, but both of them are going to be able to score points at some point next season. So they do have some value to a rebuilding team. So try to look at those routes with your guys that have been hurt, because they are going to get you 0 points the rest of the season. Do you really want them just sitting there on your IR? Are they really that valuable to you? I mean, at this point, Ayuk, you could probably get a late first for, but if you're a contending team, see, that's the thing. With both of them, the type of trade you're going to be looking at is for players. You're not going to be giving up a draft pick for that kind of player that's getting them 0. They don't want 0 points in return. They want points in return. That's my point that I really wanted to hammer home, is go out and look to get those guys, because you can get points off of your roster and improve your own first round pick. So you can nail 2 things with 1 stone, and I'm sort of saying, right? You can improve your draft pick by eliminating some of the points off of your roster. Plus, you can get somebody who's going to score points for you at some point next year. All right. So just keep that in mind. If they insist on getting a draft pick thrown in, I mean, fine, throw in a third or something to juice it up. But I can't see them wanting draft picks. They're going to want points, whether it's just a backup running back that you got to throw in to make the deal. But keep in mind, you have the leverage here. All right. They have the guy that's getting them 0 points the rest of the season. The whole reason that they're trying to trade Godwin or Ayuk is so that they can win this year. So they need to make the trade. You aren't the one that needs to make the trade. All right. So keep that in mind when you're involved in a deal with them, and just try and make things happen in your leagues. All right. Next up, let's go to the next matchup here. We've got the, let's see, what deal? What do we got here? Oh, yeah, this is a juicy one. We've got the Eagles at the Bengals. Eagles at the Bengals. Oh, gotta get this attached here. Okay. Not sure why it's saying the battery's low, but either way, you guys can hear me out there. I'm not worried. So we are looking at a huge quarterback matchup. And so we've got Jalen Hurts versus Joe Burrow, and that's just starting things off. Both teams have 2 solid wide receivers. We've got Chase and Higgins on one side, Brown and Devonta Smith on the other. Just made a deal for Devonta Smith. I should emphasize that one because it's a perfect example of what I was trying to talk about. So I had Chris Godwin on a team that was contending in a best ball format. All right. Especially in best ball, you want to eliminate zeros on your bench. So it's a 30-man roster. I want to keep the zeros off the bottom of my roster, and that's all he gives me for the rest of the season. Now, I really appreciate the top 5 season he was putting together, but at this point, I can't muster up any points from him. So I looked to the teams at the bottom of the league, and one had T. Higgins, one had Devonta Smith. So they're both receivers who aren't in that elite tier. Like I don't think I'd be able to use Chris Godwin to acquire Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, right? But T. Higgins and Devonta Smith are in that, 12 to 20 range, right? And Godwin's done enough this season to spark hope in him going forward yet. So what I attempted to do first was package Godwin with something to get to T. Higgins from one guy, and then package Godwin with something to get Devonta Smith from someone else. Now, I ended up settling. I did overpay slightly, but I gave up Godwin and my 26 first, which of course I'm hoping is late, but at that point, that's 2 years away. So I have no idea, but it still gives me another year to maybe try and get it back or build up so that it is a late 26 pick. But anyway, I ended up giving up Godwin and a 26 first for Devonta Smith and Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard. So I recouped 2 Tampa wide receivers. I do have Baker Mayfield on that team, so that's why I didn't mind grabbing those 2 guys, because they're going to score points over the next 3 weeks. I don't know which one is going to score the most points between Sterling Shepard or Trey Palmer or Jalen McMillan, who, of course, made it 2 weeks in a row that a Tampa player was the top waiver wire acquisition. But my point being that even though Jalen McMillan was the top guy that people were going after, that doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to be the main recipient of the targets from Baker. Sterling Shepard, we know, is older. Sure, he's 31, but he does have a little connection with Baker, having played with him back at Oklahoma. And so who knows, of the 3, McMillan, Shepard, and Palmer is going to end up scoring the most points over the next 3 weeks. I think they lean on the running game a lot. So you could see Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker getting a lot of work. Rashad White obviously has shown that, his running game isn't so great, but his receiving ability over the last 2 weeks has just shown up greatly. So we'll see how the Tampa offense evolves over the next couple of games. They have to play Atlanta at home, then at Kansas City on Monday night, and then home to the Niners before their bye. And after the bye, then we could see Mike Evans coming back with his hamstring injury. So that's just a little insight to the Tampa offense. Now back to the Eagles. The Eagles last week has gone kind of how we've seen them for this season. It's mainly A.J. Brown through the air, and then Saquon obviously dominating on the ground. And so Jalen Hurts really hasn't been asked to throw too much. So his numbers are down, but maybe that's a window to try and acquire Jalen Hurts. But A.J. Brown's solid. We know he's in the near elite, if not elite tier for like redraft. I would put him in the elite tier, but Dynasty is just a hair down because of his age versus, the Jeffersons and Chases, and then Neighbors, of course, too. So I would expect this game to hopefully be a high scoring one, but maybe the Eagles try and sit on it and take the air out of the ball. I don't know. Cincinnati is going to try and make it a track meet, I'm sure. So we'll see how this one goes. Chase Brown, if we look at the Cincinnati backfield, Chase Brown, I believe the team had 21 rush attempts last week, and Chase Brown had 15 of them. Okay, so Chase Brown is slowly but surely sort of not necessarily taken over the backfield, but he is the guy getting the most carries. Now, I wouldn't say, again, that he's a bell cow by any means, but it's almost like a 60-40 split, I would say, and he's definitely the more electrifying player. So definitely feel comfortable putting him in my flex. I don't know, and depends on your roster construction. He's totally fine as your RB2 as well. So I wouldn't mind getting him involved in a deal as well. Injury-wise, let's see. Zach Bond for you IDP players out there. Geno Stone. Nobody really injured of the main characters from this matchup here. So also I want to know Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow hasn't shown any side effects lately of the wrist injury he had last year. So, and the surgery that he had to have. So I think that Burrow has sort of solidified his spot as a top 10 quarterback. Worry about him dropping out. So in 6-point touchdown pass leagues, he is definitely a guy to try and go after if you can. The price is probably pretty high on him. It kind of depends on the owner. If the owner has somebody else at quarterback as well that he's totally comfortable with, then maybe you can go out and get him. But otherwise, I think Burrow is pretty solid and solidified in his spot on whoever's roster's got him right now. All right, so let's get on to the next matchup here. We've got the New York Jets traveling to New England in a real big divisional matchup. Unfortunately, both teams' records aren't that great, but the Jets have plenty of fantasy interest. What with acquiring Davante Adams last week and then him playing in that Sunday night game against Pittsburgh. You can see Rodgers there is questionable. So is Ramondre for the Patriots. I'm sure they'll both play, but let's talk about the Jets here a little bit. So they acquired Adams. So everybody got a little worried about Garrett Wilson, which is totally understandable. I mean, with the type of target share that Rodgers gave to Adams back in Green Bay, of course you're going to get concerned about what kind of target share that Garrett Wilson would be getting going forward. But as we saw, at least this was week 1 with the new wide receiver there in New York. Rodgers spread it around pretty well. There were times where things were clicking. So I think with another week of practice here, not as tough of a defense in New England as Pittsburgh. I mean, let's be real here. They were going against one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the league last week. So I don't think that we need to panic on Davante Adams. You can definitely get him probably for less than you got him for last week. So I think that we just need to possibly look at Adams if you had Ayuk or Godwin. I'm going to continue to pound that because, again, if you're a rebuilding team, there's no reason not to kick the tires on an injured player like that because you could get him cheaper than you think possibly. All right. I mean, Davante Adams' value last week, you could easily have gotten him straight up for either of those two. Now you could probably get Adams. Let me think here. If you're contending, I mean, it might be straight up now. At least that's where it would probably start. I don't think you'd have to pay Adams. I don't know that I'd pay Adams, or I don't know that I would want. Ayuk, want to give up Ayuk plus if I'm getting Adams in return. But, you might have to do that, and then I would probably try and look elsewhere, I guess is what I'm getting at. If you have Ayuk or Godwin, maybe I would give up a little bit more, like a second or third to get Adams. Because I do think that there's going to definitely be weeks going forward where Adams is getting, 12, 13 targets and having monster games. I just don't think that we're going to see the consistency that we saw in Green Bay. All right. The Jets have a very strong run game, generally stronger than what the Packers had with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. The Packers did have Aaron Jones many of those years with Adams. So they had a pretty solid run game. But I don't know. I guess it depends where you're at. And if you're willing to take on somebody like Adams. If you're in an absolute win now and Adams is your best option that you're getting out there in your market, it's all league dependent. It all depends on what those rebuilding teams at the bottom of your league, you have to go through the bottom 3 or 4 teams and see where they're at. See what veterans they've got that are available to get you points, right? But I think that my panic meter on Garrett Wilson has definitely leveled off. Breece Hall, though he didn't have a great game on the ground, had a monster game through the air, over 100 yards. So, 1 second here. We got a question here from Matt. He's wondering who to cut. So let's see here on the bottom of his roster. Well, he needs the Chargers D. Yeah, this one's pretty tough. Well, Matt, I would tell you in this league, you need to try and package up, because you don't have everybody on your bench is playable this week. So I'm going to say Otten. You have Kincaid. You don't really need. I know that Otten looks like he's going to get a bunch of targets, and we'll talk about him a little when I talk about Tampa. But, Otten is not – I would have Kincaid over Otten rest of the season for sure. And, Otten's going to have his spike weeks, but to predict when they're going to happen is impossible. It seems it only happens in games where the Bucs are playing catch up. Now, granted, the next 2-3 weeks they may be doing that often, but teams are going to be able to focus their coverage a little bit more on him with Evans and Godwin out. So don't get over your skis on Cade Otton here, folks, is what I'm getting at. Now with the Jets, Tyler Conklin is very similar. But with New England now, Hunter Henry is basically, to me, he's a top 12 tight end the rest of the season. So I would take Henry, for instance, over Conklin and Cade Otton the rest of the season. So I would, and then Drake May, I don't know where to go. He's a tough one. I don't know where to rank him. He's had 2 great games, but the matchups weren't tough. So playing Jacksonville, it's hard to say if he's going to be able to carry that momentum into a matchup like the Jets. The Jets have one of the top defenses in the league, though they did allow a ton of fantasy points to Russell Wilson. A lot of them came off the jump balls to George Pickens. The Patriots don't exactly have someone like that right now. They've got a bunch of vets and Pop Douglas and then Hunter Henry, like I said. So May's going to have to be, spreading the ball around again, and we'll see if he can pull it off against the Jets D, where he is successful again. I'd be surprised. I would not be surprised if we see a couple interceptions this week from Drake May. Now, I would expect to see the rushing ability still be there in this game. So his floor is still going to be all right. And that's what excites me about Drake May, is that he's still going to have a decent floor. I'd still have him behind, obviously, Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams rest of the season. But, he's not far, honestly, the way he's played. He's not far behind Caleb Williams, really, rest of the season. So we'll see. I like what Drake May has shown so far, though. Let's see here. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next matchup for the week, we're going to get into the Green Bay Jacksonville matchup. Let's talk about that one. So Jordan Love has put up plenty of fantasy points the last couple of weeks, but he's turned it over a lot too. So he's got to make sure he isn't throwing the ball to the Jaguars too much if the Packers are going to go and get out of Jacksonville without losing one that they should. All right. This is a game that the Packers could, it's sandwiched in between. I just want to check out their schedule here. The Packers next week have Detroit and then they're bye. So they just got done with Houston and now they got this Jaguars team, which hasn't been great, obviously. Their defense has been very questionable all season, but they were able to pull out the victory in London behind Tank Bigsby's big game on the ground. And so the Packers have to make sure that they don't get behind early here to a little bit of a dangerous Jacksonville team. I mean, just look at the talent they have got on offense between Brian Thomas and Trevor Lawrence, of course, and then Tank kind of taking over the backfield here while ETN's been banged up with that shoulder injury. So the Jags have the talent all around. They've got plenty of talent on defense too. It's just that then their secondary's just been torched. And so New England, obviously, with their lack of talent at the receiver position, wasn't able to take advantage of that. I do think the Packers can take advantage of that. So even if they do get down, they would be able to come back against a team like Jacksonville. But again, the recipe for disaster on the Packers side is if Jordan Love isn't able to locate his own teammates. So keep throwing to the green guys there, Love. All right. On the injury front for the Packers, let's see what Christian Watson's latest update is here. Don't see him on the report, so maybe he is good to go and we don't need to worry about it. Jaden Reed is questionable. What's he got going on? An ankle, limited in practice. So he did practice on Wednesday. I would expect him to play. Jaden Reed's one of those sort of indispensable guys. So because nobody else in the Packers offense can do what Jaden Reed does. The other receivers in that Packers offense are pretty interchangeable. Watson obviously is the best deep threat, but with Wicks and Romeo Dobbs, they're both good intermediate route runners. So I'm just going to tell him, just watch. All right. As far as the, I did see Josh Jacobs up there too. Okay. No, he's not hurt. All right. On the Jaguars side of the ball, Evan Ingram popped up on the injury report today. Let's see what that was. Ingram's been pretty solid since coming back from his early season injuries. He got a hamstring, so he was limited in practice. Now, if he didn't practice today, then maybe I'd be a little more worried, but he did practice in a limited fashion today. So I don't think I'd be all that worried about Ingram playing. If not, of course, Brendan Strange is there for a last-minute plug-in. He's filled in all right. But Evan Ingram so far, just yeah. So Ingram's caught all of his targets since returning from injury, and he's been a monster, really. So he's changed the outlook on the Jaguars offense, and Trevor Lawrence obviously loves him. So fire up Ingram, obviously. I mean, he's with the tight end landscape this year, he's pretty much back to being a top 5 tight end once again. As you know, last year he finished 1 or 2, depending on your scoring format. So can't go wrong there. On the Packers side of the ball, Tucker Kraft had a great touchdown catch last week. He's playing great as well, while Luke Musgrave is out. Romeo Dobbs had another good week. So the Packers offense is looking solid. Again, it just comes down to Jordan Love throwing it to his teammates. Trevor Lawrence, as I mentioned in the show a couple weeks ago, is a buy for me. Still feel the same. The Jaguars are starting to play better now as a team. So I don't know. You could see a tight one here. Most of you probably look at this as an easy win for the Packers, but I think this could be a tight one. So I wouldn't put it past the Jaguars to pull off the upset here, but I would definitely lean Packers. The spread on it here, this should be a high over under. Yeah, 49.5. So should see points in this one. Packers are favored by 5.5. Or no, that's what it opened at, and it's fallen down to a 4-point spread. So they're betting on the Jaguars here. So like I said, it should be a close one, in my opinion. Next up, we've got the Tennessee Titans traveling to the Detroit Lions. Now, this is probably one of the bigger mismatches of the week. Lions are favored by 11, 44.5 over under. On the injury front, we've got Will Levis still questionable with that shoulder issue. Calvin Ridley popped up on the injury report. So we'll probably see Mason Rudolph slinging it around for the Titans. He actually put up an all right game. 40 pass attempts, didn't even get to 300 yards on that, though. And now he just lost DeAndre Hopkins because of the trade of Hopkins to the Chiefs. Ridley has a foot injury, so that's something to monitor. Definitely monitor that all week. So once again, another wide receiver banged up. Now, Ridley had complained about getting some pass attempts thrown his way. He caught 3 for 42, I think it was last week. So it didn't do a whole lot, but it was better than what he had done the previous couple of weeks. So Tyler Boyd, look for him to get plenty of targets this week. So he'd be a real deep sleeper in some leagues for you. And then over on the Lions side, we've got, let's look at the injuries for the Lions. They've got doesn't look like they've got too many guys banged up right now. Yeah. The key thing for the Lions, though, is JMO being suspended for a couple of games for PED use. So, I don't know. JMO just can't stay out of trouble, I guess. Is it a buy opportunity for JMO? I don't know. After the way he started his career, I was out on him when he was getting drafted, and I was just always out on him. So I guess if you want to go out and get him, he'd be cheaper than he was a week or two ago. And he could be somebody, I mean, in best ball, I wouldn't mind having him. I'll say that. But in a lineup league, I just get frustrated with, like I traded for Devonta Smith, and that was a best ball league. Like lineup league, I don't love having Devonta Smith. I'll say that. So JMO is somebody, you could probably buy lower on, right? So that would be an option if you are a contender and like you're already in the top 3 or 4 of your league. Now, when we get to the Lions running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs popped off with his first huge game last week. He actually got in the end zone. David Montgomery broke his string of 8 straight games with touchdowns. He did not get there last week, but he was banged up in the middle of that game. He did return, so I think he'll be fine and good to go this week. Fire up all your Lions here. They're going to score early, score often, and then Mason Rudolph will get some yardage in the second half. But this has the likings of a 40-10 route here. Fire up all your Lions with confidence here. All right. Titans backfield real quickly. Tony Pollard was monitored for a concussion last week, but he came back. He's good to go. Tyjae Spears still will be out this week as well. He's listed as questionable, but I don't think he's going to be ready. So next up, we have, what do we got here? Oh, yes. The return of Tua. Yes. So the buy low window on all those Dolphins skill position players has closed. Yes. You will not be able to acquire them for as cheap as you could have 4 weeks ago, then 3 weeks ago, then 2 weeks ago, and even last week. So, because nobody who has Dolphins, except maybe a contender, or a rebuilder who was holding on to them, waiting for Tua to get back. Now they might be willing to sell them, and now you got to pay the premium for Tyreek and Waddle and Achane. So, your buy low window is closed now on the Dolphins, and so we should see the Dolphins maybe slinging. I don't know. It's going to be Tua's first week back, so he may struggle a little bit. But he's really just got to deliver the ball to these guys and let them do their thing. On the Arizona side of the ball, they have struggled on offense. It's just been really ugly watching this offense go. James Conner, you can play with confidence, but outside of that, Kyler, if you've got him, you almost have to play him. The Dolphins are favored by 3.5 here, over under 45.5. So who knows how high this one's going to be scoring wise. Marvin Harrison, if you've got him, you pretty much have to play him. So hopefully this game is a turnaround for the Cardinals offense, but they have not looked great. Kyler has not looked very good. Basically, last week, the 44-yard touchdown run bailed out another poor performance throwing the ball. And so we'll see how it looks. Trey McBride, let's see here. Just want to make sure he's not on the report. No, he's not. But all off season, we were figuring it's going to be Marv and McBride and them two just dominating the targets. But so far, it hasn't really gone that way. But, Marv's a rookie, and the rookies always shine second half of the season. So if you are able to buy low on Marv right now based off of his performance, especially in Dynasty, do it. All right. He could be one of the best buy lows right now for somebody that maybe they're a contender and they're frustrated with his performance. Even McBride, I could see as a buy low. Now, McBride, he had monster targets last year, didn't get in the end zone that often. Looked at his college numbers, and he didn't get in the end zone that often either in college. So maybe he's just not as good of a red zone threat as you would think. But him too, he could be a buy low as well. So kick the tires on those two. I do think that the Cardinals offense can turn it around. I mean, they can't be much worse as a passing offense as they have been. So it's not a bad buy low opportunity there for the Cardinals. All right. Slide on over to the next matchup. These are all noon games so far. So the noon slate's got a lot of them. And this one has the Baltimore Ravens traveling to the Cleveland Browns. Whew. What can I say about Baltimore that hasn't been said already since Monday nights? Just destruction of my Buccaneers. Derrick Henry is just a beast. Yes. And I'm glad to have him in all of the dynasty leagues that I do. He's not going anywhere. I will gladly ride him to a title. So hang on to him. If you got Lamar, obviously you're loving life because he is carrying your team. You can have Lamar and just average stuff elsewhere, and you're probably in a pretty good position right now. So 5 touchdown passes with Lamar on Monday night. Zay Flowers is banged up a little. Let me check that injury out here. It's questionable. I know that he came out of the game. Yeah, it's his ankle. He was a non-participant today at practice. So that's something to keep an eye on this week. Rashad Bateman obviously stepped up and actually caught the ball. So he had a big one. Bateman's somebody, it's fine to own in best ball, but in a lineup league, I have no idea. There's no way I'm starting him. There's no buys this week. There shouldn't be a reason you have to start Rashad Bateman. And then over on the Cleveland side of the ball, who knows who's starting there? DTR is good to go, but will they go with Jameis Winston? We'll see. I would obviously love to see Jameis Winston in action. So then we can see if it's going to be the Cedric Tillman show or just David Njoku all day. One thing to keep in mind with Jameis Winston at quarterback, he did not throw to the tight end too much in Tampa, they had OJ Howard all those years, and he never blossomed. So hopefully Njoku will do well if it's Winston. He put up a bunch of he had a ton of catches last week, but a lot of them were from DTR. So if DTR is back in there again, look for Njoku to boom once more. As far as the other Cleveland receivers go, though, I'm not buying into any of them. Nick Chubb did get in the end zone, only 22 yards on the ground, though. So start him if you have to, I guess, is what I'll say. Jerome Ford is out. And then Nyheim Hines is possibly ready to go. So it could just be Nick Chubb and Pierre Strong there in the backfield for Cleveland. I don't expect them to be running out the clock in this one, though. I mean, the Ravens are... what is the line here? Only 8.5. Geez. I would think this would be, well, it is in Cleveland, I guess. But yeah, Ravens are favored by 8.5 over under 44.5. It's a divisional game, so the Browns could step up their defense and keep it close. But I don't see anybody stopping this Ravens team in the near future, at least. All right. What else do I got? So if we're talking before I move on to the next game, Derrick Henry, he's probably, anybody who has him is a contender already, but if he's still out there available, I would not mind giving up a late first for him. We'll put it that way. I mean, he's the top running back in the league. He's got the most yards. He's got the most fantasy points at the position. As long as he's healthy, he's getting the ball. And even if he only has 15 yards in the first half, you can see what he can do as to in regards to what he did on Monday night. So he is only 30 years young. The guy could play for, basically he's going to play until he doesn't want to play anymore, I guess is the best way I can put it. All right, let's move on then to the next matchup, and that's a divisional one with the Colts and Texans here. So we've got the 4-3 Colts visiting the 5-2 Houston Texans. It's a big game in the AFC South here. Anthony Richardson getting the start again. And we'll see if these quarterbacks can bounce back. Obviously, huge hype in the offseason for Richardson and Stroud. But right now, their values have dipped, so I wouldn't mind going after either of them. Richardson, I'd be a little more tentative on, I guess, just based off of, you can see here, 49 for 101 in the air so far this season. So he's going to have to improve that because, a 3 touchdown to 6 interception ratio is just, it's just not good. And then fantasy-wise, his receivers, none of them are startable when he's in there. Jonathan Taylor could likely be back this week. Let's see if he practiced today. He was limited today. So another star injury to monitor this week. If he doesn't go, I suppose it'll be the Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon show once again for them. On the Houston side of the ball, Joe Mixon came back from his injury, went over 100 yards, had a big game against the Packers last week. So I think the Texans are ready to roll. They are just waiting for Nico Collins to get back so that they are firing on all cylinders. But, C.J. Stroud's definitely somebody you could look to acquire cheaper right now because in a few weeks, when Collins comes back just in time for your playoff stretch, that will be when you want Nico Collins and the Texans receivers. All right. Let's move on to the next matchup here. Let's see. Before we get to the what do we got here? Any more noon games? No, just my Buccaneers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Right now, the Falcons are just 2.5-point favorites, 46.5 over under. I would personally have the Falcons favored by more, just because I have no idea what Tampa's offense is going to look like without their two stud receivers. So Baker is probably somebody I would put on the bench this week if I can. I mean, most of your teams, I don't think you would have drafted Baker as a surefire number one quarterback. So you probably have another option. Maybe look to that, because Mayfield, we'll see what he does first week without his guys. I would think Tampa will try and lean on the run a little, maybe try and shorten the game. So I could see them try and run the clock and hope that their defense can somehow find a way to stop Kirk Cousins this time. Last time, the game went to overtime, but Cousins still put up 500 yards. 500 yards passing. I don't care if it's in overtime or not. That's just a ton of yards. And so fire up all of your Falcons here with confidence. I know it's going to be outdoors, but still. Bijan, London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, all of them get into your lineup this week. Cousins for sure. So, I am not looking forward to this matchup as a Bucs fan. Now, for the Bucs receiver core, we've got Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, and Trey Palmer. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I could not tell you who's going to lead the team in targets of those three. If I had to bet on it, I guess I would say McMillan, because I think he's probably the best suited to fill in the Godwin role in the Ram style offense that the Bucs are running. So he's just got to hang on to the ball. I mean, he's had a few drops so far this season. So, not totally excited about it, but we'll see. I mean, somebody's got to run routes. Somebody's got to catch some balls. All right. So I don't want to beat Buccaneers with a dead horse here. So we'll move on then to the late games on the Sunday slate. We've got New Orleans traveling to the LA Chargers, and Justin Herbert. Saints are at 2-5 after an ugly performance last Thursday. Then the Chargers just losing to the Cardinals in a tight one on Monday night. I would look for the Chargers to dominate this one. As of now, they're a 7-point favorite, 40.5 only on the over-under. So look for a low-scoring game. This could be one where J.K. Dobbins gets back on track. He dominated first 3 weeks, but the last 3 weeks hasn't been so dominant. But today it was brought out that Alvin Kamara actually has been playing with a broken hand. I don't know how he signed that 2-year extension, but he somehow figured it out with the broken hand. So right now, Kamara, with all the catches he's had, he's running back 2 in our fantasy leagues, just behind Derrick Henry. Now, the main thing here is if Derek Carr is going to be back, and he's listed at questionable with that oblique injury. Let's see what he said, if it says if he practiced or not, because their ability to compete in this game really hinges on Derek Carr's availability. It just says he's unlikely to play. Spencer Rattler expected to make his 3rd straight start. All right. So there you have it. And, the Saints, of course, are playing with I don't want to say a depleted receiver room, but if Olave is not able to go again, I think Olave should be ready. He missed because of a concussion last week, so I think he'll be ready to go. So at least Carr will have him. Rashid Shaheed, of course, out for the season, so that hurts their deep ball ability. Bubba Means had a big game 2 weeks ago, but last week not so much. So I think he goes back to your bench. So yeah, Olave would be the only one startable for the Saints. Fire up Kamara as long as he's playing, even with a broken hand. He was still able to catch the ball. Hey, I mean, if you've got him, you basically have to start him. So this one could get ugly, a real shortened game, ugly 20-6 type game, possibly. I don't know. This is a game I would not want to have to be forced to watch, put it that way. Let's get to the next matchup, and that would be, let's see here. Where are those 3 o'clock games? Okay. Next, here we go. Yes. Buffalo traveling to Seattle. All right. And here, of course, main thing would be the availability of DK Metcalf. Metcalf had another solid game last week in Atlanta, but hurt his knee coming down with a catch late in the third quarter. And they said that after an MRI that it was a mild MCL sprain. Typically, it needs 1 to 2 weeks of rest. So if DK plays on Sunday, it will be not maybe a minor miracle, I guess you could call it. But, Seattle needs him. But they do have Lockett and JSN if Metcalf isn't able to go. Noah Fant's been startable the last few games. So if you need a tight end, and you play in your streaming tight end, Fant isn't terrible either. Geno, you can fire him up. Now, the Bills have a tough pass defense, so either way, it might be ugly for Geno, but, the Seahawks have been slinging it, and Kenny Walker has been catching the ball the last few games, so he's definitely become a true bell cow back. He's gotten in the end zone through the air. He's just playing great. On the Buffalo side of the ball, Keon Coleman went over 100 yards last week, so that was good to see from the rookie. Josh Allen just coming into his own now. He had a couple of stinker games earlier, but now I think he's getting into rhythm, and I think we could see some real fireworks here. This game, I would not be shy about going on the over here. It's 46.5. Bills are favored by 3. So look for a big game from Josh Allen, and you can start James Cook with confidence too. All right. I don't know that any of the Bills receivers are surefire starts yet. If you have to play them, go ahead. Shakir still had a decent game, 7 for 65. Of course, the addition of Amari Cooper helped out that Bills offense last week. He got into the end zone with a nice grab over the middle. So he's definitely startable. And so, the Bills offense looked very solid with Amari Cooper in there. And now one more week of studying and practice with Josh Allen should only help them get better. All right. So very scary Bills team now going forward. All right. Now, one of the games everybody's looking forward to, and hopefully Jaden Daniels can play. It's kind of going back and forth between Daniels or Marcus Mariota as the starter for the Commanders. Commanders are at 5-2, Bears at 4-2. So both teams looking good with their new quarterbacks. But yeah, we have the rib injury from Daniels. So that's something obviously to keep watch of. Caleb Williams looking good. You could start any of the Bears receivers, honestly, and I don't know which one to tell you will pop from week to week. On the Washington side, you can start Terry McLaurin with confidence, Brian Robinson, and I don't know that I'd play Austin Eckler right now, but McLaurin's definitely turned it on this season, and he's a top 10 wide receiver right now. DeAndre Swift still having a strong last few weeks, so you can start him with confidence as well. All right. Moving along here. Next up, we've got what looks to be a pretty ugly one here. Carolina, 1-6, traveling to the Denver Broncos, who are 4-3, but their defense just dominated that Thursday night game against the Saints. So I don't know that I would start any of the Panthers. I mean, Chuba, you can start him if you got him. You might have to. He could get some catches. Last week, it didn't look good for him at all, and he snuck into the end zone in the second half. Still got you into the teens in points. Javonte Williams, though, showed up last week, and so those owners probably had him on their bench unless they had to start him. But so Javonte is looking strong now, and when you combine a solid running back with a good defense, those are usually a good recipe for success. Bo Nix looking good. Andy Dalton hurt his thumb, though, in a car accident yesterday, and so I don't think he's going to get the start. So it could be back to Bryce Young, and that could just be yikes. So Deontay Johnson, if it is Bryce Young, I'm benching him. I might bench Deontay Johnson anyway. If Patrick Surtain is back, let's see if they've got him on the injury report or not this week for the Broncos. Surtain is listed as questionable. Surtain, it was a concussion that kept him out. Okay, so he was a full participant in Wednesdays, so I would expect him to be back this week. So yeah, I would bench Deontay Johnson unless you absolutely have to play him. All right. Denver receivers, I don't know that I'd play any of them. I mean, Cortland Sutton didn't even get a target last week. So Bo Nix you can play just because his rushing ability has shown up, and it gives you a good solid floor there. But passing-wise, I mean, there's no way he's getting to 300 yards. And so if he gets a touchdown or two, you're lucky. So I don't love Bo Nix. And with their defense that's probably suited up to dominate this game, I would probably shy away. All right, now to the Kansas City Chiefs and their big addition this week, DeAndre Hopkins coming to town. We'll see how much he plays week one with the Chiefs. Andy Reid's got a pretty complex playbook, so I don't know how much he will get. Like Juju came in, but Juju had previous experience there with Kansas City. Same with McCole Hardman. So I don't know how well Hopkins will know the playbook here week one. So I wouldn't just fire him up immediately, but at the same time, Mahomes does a lot of improvising, and so that could get Hopkins open deep, and who knows. So if you got to play Hopkins, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. Injury-wise, Kareem Hunt popped up on the injury list today with let's see what it was, a hip injury. So that's something to monitor. If he can't go, I guess it would be a split again between Samaje Perine and our lovable Carson Steele. Clyde Edwards-Helaire still has not played this season, so maybe he gets his first action if Kareem Hunt isn't able to go, but I would expect Hunt to be able to go. I think they're just doing their due diligence there. Raiders side of the ball. Ooh, man. Oh, when we're talking Hopkins, I did want to mention, like, if you're trying to get rid of Godwin or Ayuk, Hopkins is somebody you could go out and get. You could probably get something also on top of Hopkins, maybe a running back body as well. So if you're contending and you don't want to wait till next year to get points from Ayuk or Godwin, Hopkins is maybe somebody you could go get now that he's got some life breathed back into him. On the Raiders side of the ball, though, looks like it'll be Gardner Minshew back running the show. Jacoby Myers might be back. So, this is an interdivision game. And so, yeah, Myers was limited in practice, but he did show up. And so the Raiders can play the Chiefs tough. I know they've looked terrible all season in general, but they're sitting at 2-5. They'll be at home. The Chiefs haven't looked amazing. I'll say that. So either this is going to be their game where they break out or possibly lose to an interdivisional rival. That's where I'm looking at. Chiefs are favored by 10 here, 41.5 total. So this is a tough one to call, honestly. Don't know what kind of team's going to show up for the Chiefs here. All right. Then we get to the Sunday night game. And this one, who knows, right? Cowboys 3-3 stumble into San Francisco off their bye. San Francisco at 3-4, crawling into this one. I mean, Brock Purdy had to carry that team last week. It was so painful. Oh. Brady Flash in the house. What's up, Flash? How you doing? Enjoying it, dominating everybody in the Birdhouse. Oh. Good to see you, Brady. Let's see, how bad are you dominating? You are at... What are you at record-wise? This is the Birdhouse 2 league that Brady Flash is a part of. He is sitting at, right now, he is sitting at, tied for first, about 200 points behind Mojo, but they're both sitting at 12-2. So, yeah, good start for you, Brady. Who's been carrying him here? Well, he's got neighbors, so it can't go wrong there, Brady. Yeah, Gibbs, Jalen. Somehow with only Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones, you've been able to pull it off. So you're welcome. I remember giving you Daniel Jones right before the season started. It didn't look like it started off that well, but yeah, those 2 seconds are paying off for you right now. Tucker Kraft, yeah. He's got Juwan Jennings. Big week there. So Juwan Jennings is a question mark now that we're talking about this one. So if Jennings plays, he's definitely startable, I would say. Otherwise, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen with the Niners receiving core. It's not like I'm going to fire up Ricky Pearsall with confidence. But who knows? I mean, Debo might play for all we know. He had pneumonia or pneumonia-like symptoms that he checked himself into. Nobody knows really because it's the Niners. And I personally, as I tweeted out on Sunday, I think that they should just be fined for their lying on the injury reports because that's literally what they've been doing. Go back to week 1 when they said that McCaffrey was questionable all the way up until game time on Monday night, and now he's missed 8 weeks. Come on, right? I mean, Shanahan even said, oh, if it's a playoff game, he would have played, I think. Come on. And then he misses 8 weeks. And then after the game, Jordan Mason said, yeah, I knew I was starting since Friday. How is that? I mean, I don't understand. If you're not going to fine a team for literally lying like that, what's the point of the injury report, right? So anyway, Jordan, that means we'll talk about Jordan Mason here, who he is questionable as well. Let's check on him here. He was limited practice with an ankle injury. I'd expect him to play, honestly. They're just going to rest him so that he's available on Sunday night. Cowboys side of the ball, what is the big question? Of course, is CeeDee Lamb going to get the ball? Last year, after their bye, is when CeeDee just took off and averaged like over 25 a game for the remainder of the year. So let's see if the Cowboys figured something out. We all know that they've had trouble with their O-line, and the Niners aren't exactly the matchup you want with the struggling offensive line, but we'll see if they've made some adjustments, tried to figure things out. I don't know that the running game is going to be any better than what we've seen so far from them. But, passing wise, we've seen some spurts from Jalen Tolbert. And so there's still Jake Ferguson there. So the weapons are still there for Dak. It's just a matter of putting it all together, I think, and seeing if Coach McCarthy has figured some things out there to get some W. Because, man, Cowboys have been a rough watch so far. I'll say that. And what can we do? I mean, they're on just as much as the Chiefs, so both hard to watch right now. Niners side, I mean, is Brock Purdy? You can't bench Purdy. I mean, I guess if you got another option that's decent, you might, but very likely that he was your QB1, and you just got to roll with him right now. Like I said, I mean, Debo could very well play, but as of now, I would lean towards him not playing. So, but if Jawan Jennings is in there, and then you got Pearsall and a bunch of other dudes, that Ricky Bell, I know will be there. I don't know. Still have George Kittle, right? So look for Kittle to have a good game, and I think the Niners will still roll in this one. Niners are favored by 4 as of right now with a 45.5 over-under. So don't know that this one will get very high scoring, but you never know. Cowboys-Niners games always seem to get a little wacky somehow. And it's definitely still a must-watch, of course. It is the Cowboys-Niners, right? Then we'll get to the final matchup of the week, and that will have the New York Giants. Whoa, we don't want to see that. That will have the New York Giants traveling to Pittsburgh. That's right. We get to see Pittsburgh on Monday night this week. So we get back-to-back feature games with Russell Wilson. Can he do it once again? Russ just lighting things up against the Jets D last week. Daniel Jones, don't think I'm starting Daniel Jones this week. Just say that. Malik Neighbors, can't bench Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson, probably not a start. Giants backfield between Tyron Tracy and Devin Singletary. I guess I'd lean Tracy at this point. They announced Singletary as the starter last week, but then hardly played him. I mean, they announced him as the starter, but then they started Tyron Tracy on the first down. So that goes to show where they were at with Singletary. Tracy just looks more explosive. We'll put it that way. Singletary is kind of like just a guy. So I think they're trying to work Tracy into more of the offense. I don't think either of them is going to be a bell cow by any stretch, but they could be down in this one. Brees Hall just had a monster game through the air against the Steelers defense. So I'm sure that the Giants wouldn't mind seeing that from Tracy. But yeah, look for the Giants to establish Neighbors, of course. I just don't know that the Giants are going to have much. This could be in a real ugly 16-3 game. Najee Harris, fire him up with confidence, though. That's for sure. Najee put on the hurt in the fourth quarter against the Jets. Won me one of my games, so I was very happy with Najee's performance. Russell Wilson, if you got him in a super flex, go ahead and play him. I mean, I can't imagine Russell Wilson was carrying anybody's team. Whatever he got from him last week was just phenomenal, just gravy. So, all right. Anyway, anybody got any questions? Just, fire them away at buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. You can join my Patreon at patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. We'll be back tomorrow with Matt English doing a trade show for y'all to check out. Yes, we will deliver the trades over the last couple of weeks in my Dynasty leagues. If you've got a trade that you want reviewed, go ahead and throw it in the chat on my Patreon. I will be happy to check it out for you. Other than that, I just want to remind you guys, no matter how hard things get, no matter how hard those injuries deplete and defeat you, there's still another day. Always live to see another day and never stop working.